are my most trusted soldiers. We can't defeat the enemy alone. We'll need the help of old friends and old enemies. We can't win through force of arms. Deception, stealth, and misdirection will help us stay alive. We will use any means necessary to defeat this enemy. Always remember, victory is life.
Hello everyone. To break up the monotony of management games, I'm reviewing Star Trek Online today. Probably one of my favorite MMOs in history of games of all time ever. And no matter how many times I get fed up with it, I always come back. Let's begin, shall we? So as with every MMO, the first question everyone always asks is how much like World of Warcraft is it? Well, the easy answer is it's not much like World of Warcraft. There may be some similarities, but as far as I can tell, they're not glaring or overt about them. I suppose if there is one thing that's similar, it's the ability hotbar, but what MMO doesn't have an ability hotbar? Also, this Star Trek game actually feels like Star Trek. Mind you, not all the time, as action is required of a game like this to keep it interesting to the more fast-paced players. It does have a solid amount of science missions and diplomacy missions, keeping it rather close to real Star Trek, and that fans will love. And it's an MMO, so the art style is more important than the graphics, so let's start there. The art style is quite on to Star Trek. All the races look correct. All the ships seem right on model to the ones in the shows. The effects aren't too flashy, but of course the effects have to be a little flashy to keep the Gorn-brained idiots entertained. It's 2018 for God's sake. Can't they just add an option to turn it on and off? Jeez. But all in all, I suppose they're bearable. The graphics aren't really anything to write home about, though they could be improved, but for my tastes, they work perfectly fine. The music, from what I can tell, is mostly orchestral. That is, when there is music. Most of the time you just get ambient noise from your engines in space. Just listen. So what would you call that? I know me and Shiz were addicted to it for a while. Like, it hurt to turn it off. Everything was just too silent without it. Anyways, play responsibly. But other than that, the sounds are Star Trek-y enough. They use older sounds from the old series for the old series weapons, quote-unquote. And basically every weapon in the show is represented in the game. So the weapons sound good, the art is fine, but now for the biggest part of any MMO, the gameplay. After several hours of playing the game, I have it on good authority that the game is fun for my tastes, the space combat especially being probably the best part of the game. But I'm not saying the ground combat is bad at any point, it's just not as good as space. The space combat uses a four-sided Simon Says looking thing which represents your shields, which need to be brought down to 0 to do any significant damage to the spaceship's hull, which also needs to be brought down to 0 in order to destroy or be destroyed. And there are several types of weapon damages, a few of them being phaser, plasma, anti-proton, and disruptor. There's many more, but I have limited time. Each has its own damage type as well, and has different effectiveness against different things. It's usually best to only have one type of damage on your ship though, as you will also need to outfit your ship with consoles that can increase the outgoing damage. So if you're one of those EVE Online guys that just wants to spend hours reading spreadsheets of things, you might be interested in this game. Meanwhile, ground combat is relatively standard for an MMO. You point at an enemy, click your attack buttons, Nothing too different. Since the Delta Rising expansion, the game got a lot harder in the endgame. Now you generally have to group up in order to replay missions, or have a well-optimized build. But in general, you won't have that much of a difficulty problem if you have a friend or two to play with. To get the good gear for the late game, you need to grind reputation, very similar to other MMOs' late games. But if you're on Starfleet, I recommend you go for the Omega Task Force as early as possible. Not only is it relatively good, but it's basically the only good-looking armor in the game. To grind that, you need to get marks for the faction, which can be acquired from doing fleet actions, which are basically PvE raids. And around the holidays, they give marks out like candy. Also, speaking of PvE, this is probably going to disappoint a lot of weirdos, but PvP is virtually non-existent on this game. Believe me, I talked to both the guys that still try and do it, and they said no one else ever plays it. Like any good MMO, it has a few problems, like I said earlier with the difficulty. There are several gameplay bugs that occur from time to time. Sometimes quests will bug out and need to be restarted. And the game could probably be clearer on some things, like time required for an account to be able to join a fleet. But those are really my only complaints. When you make your character, you can choose between Starfleet, the Rom-Com Republic, and the Kings of Leon Empire. Each of the opening missions are slightly different, but here's a condensed version. You are doing something, then you are attacked. You have to fight things, and then you get a ship, and fight things in space. You get to keep the ship, and you trek out among the stars. So I have to give this game 3 out of 4 lights. But no, seriously, it's a great game, and the best part is it's free. You should try it right after this video. Go on Steam, download it. It's like 12 gigs, but it's worth it. If you have the space, absolutely try it out. It's the best MMO I've ever played. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm sorry it was a month late. See you guys in the next one. Bye!
Here's to the finest crew in Starfleet. Engage. Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise. Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise.
Make it so. Make it so. Make it so. Make it so.
First duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth. Scientific truth, or historical truth, or personal truth. It is the guiding principle on which Starfleet is based. Now, if you can't find it within yourself to stand up, tell the truth. You don't deserve to wear that uniform. This has become...
It's not funny, but it's hilarious every fucking time.
How fast am I going?
You're just kind of undulating left and right, and then sometimes doing a full spin.
How about now?
There we go. Star Trek Online branded fidget spinners. It's just a Romulan with a pole up its ass stuck in the ground. Okay, that's enough of that.